All right, everybody, welcome to the show. Others receiving votes. I'm Pat Forde, joined as always by Gene Wojciechowski and Bryan Fischer. We're coming to you on Tuesday instead of the usual Thursday because stuff has happened. A lot of wild stuff. Obviously, the shocking but not surprising, I guess, news at Penn State. Going to dominate the show today. What Penn State did, what it should do next, what James Franklin should do, what Forde should do, what Curt Cignetti should do, Matt Rule, who knows? We'll cover a lot of permutations and possibilities there. We will certainly get to the big games this week, and there are several of them, some really interesting games there that I think will further shape the playoff situation. So we'll cover those. We'll do our picks as usual. Man, we had a good week. Everybody is 500 or better now. Again, I'm not saying don't use our betting advice, but we actually almost know what we're talking about. Slightly scary. And we're going to have some midseason awards, too. We're at that point in the proceedings. We're actually halfway through the season, and so we'll do that as well. And then I got a story for y'all at the end. But, guys, obviously we want to start with Penn State there. If you go back to the last weekend of September, they're going into overtime against Oregon. Bryan, you're there. They make one play, two plays. They not only win the game, they're probably number one in the country. 3 weeks later, James Franklin's fired. What the hell happened? Gene, what was your reaction as all of this was unfolding?
Shock. I mean, you said it might not be surprising. It was surprising to me. I mean, not the idea that he got fired. Certainly when you lose to UCLA and you lose to Northwestern and you can't win the big game again at Oregon, something's going to happen. But still, the actual news of it was like, I think I texted you right after, like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, so it wasn't disbelief that it happened. It was just weird to actually see it happen, if that makes any sense at all. I think I learned from it that these schools can find the money whenever they need to find the money, even if it's $49 million to pay off James Franklin to go away. You know, the fiscal year 2024 for Penn State, they had an operating revenue of $221 million almost.
Not bad.
They made almost $6 million in profit last year. I mean, these are corporations, and so they can find the money when they want to. The other thing that struck me, guys, was I think James Franklin knew he was cooked. I think he knew he was out. And the only reason I say that is if you go back, did you see what he did after the Northwestern loss? He stayed on the field. He kind of stared out into the stands, and he had done that before, but it struck me as if he were soaking it in, as if he knew this was going to be the last time he was the head coach of Penn State on that field. And then he waited for each player to come off the field, and he hugged them. I just don't think that was an accident. And I think finally the other thing that it proved is that you can get pink slipped anytime now. Coaches are vulnerable from day one, and James Franklin is evidence one of it. I think they couldn't really live with the big game James failures, and ultimately the little game James failures, the UCLA's and the Northwesterns were just the absolute final straw.
And this was usually the game that James Franklin wouldn't lose. You know, he would usually win those games where he had more talent, where he would, have the better team. And that's what was kind of surprising about the way this season spiraled. It was not necessarily that, all right, you come close to Oregon. Okay, you can understand maybe there's a letdown right after that, but it's just the compiling factor that I think certainly led Penn State to make this decision. And you're right, Gino. I mean, like after the games, the look of James Franklin had, it kind of got progressively almost an era of despair a little bit from that Penn State loss.
Resignation. Right, yeah.
He was comforting those players. He kind of understood, all right, I know the narrative. He spoke to that after the game, but he understood things were different. I think after that Northwestern game, and I mean, to have, go out and say, all right, Drew Aller, usually somebody that didn't speak on injuries, to say, all right, he's out for the season, and kind of do it so matter of factly, like you could almost tell there was almost some resignation, in his voice. And you mentioned the physical numbers. So I think that's why everybody kind of expected something to happen at some point, but I think it was the timing that caught everybody by surprise. And unless you were there at Penn State, I think there was some expectation that there would be some movement this year, especially after that Northwestern game. And look, Pat Kraft has to understand, he has $44 million in ticket sales for football games. He's got $30+ million in donations every single year there at Penn State. He needs to make sure that those figures do not get cut in half. And this is at least an opportunity to get that fan base rallying around this team and rallying around at least the idea of hope, that there is hope at the end of the tunnel, because there wasn't any if they kept James Franklin around. I think there was kind of probably an expectation that this could have been toxic, the rest of the season if he had kept him around. And so at least, that they kind of live up to the old Florida saying that Jeremy Foley had, that, what must be done eventually must be done now. And that they made the move on Sunday.
Yeah, it was 100% trending that way, but it still is pretty wild to see a guy with a 70% winning percentage at Penn State.
Yeah.
Only 3 guys in all of Power 4 have a better record than him right now the last 4 years.
Yeah. 5 top 10 finishes, 6 seasons of 10+ wins. He won 13 games last year. He was in the national semifinals. If Drew Aller doesn't throw a back foot pass, they're at least in overtime against Notre Dame and may win. They were winning that game. I think it was 10-0 late in the first half. Steve Angeli comes off the bench, leads a field goal drive, and kind of flips the whole game around for Notre Dame. It's that close. Like, these are the margins between playing for a national title and getting fired 6 games into the next season. That's the amazing thing about this sport. And I'm as big a critic probably as anybody of coaches, being overpaid and imperious and that's control freaks and that sort of thing. But it does give you it gives me at least a little bit of sympathy for their situations of, man, you signed up for a brutal profession. You're getting paid like a sultan and you're getting paid to go away, but you're living and dying in a zero-sum industry. Somebody's got to lose, and the way you can lose can be by the most razor thin margins. I'm just curious, you guys, what your thoughts on where the profession is from a coaching standpoint. If you're watching this, Steve Sarkisian talked about this a little bit, and I'm like, hey, this shows that it can basically happen to anyone out there.
Well, that's what the money is for, right? That's part of it, and I feel really bad for a lot of those staffers, around Penn State, that, a lot of those guys have been there, 10+ years, with James Franklin, who some of them came over from him, with Vandy, and I think that, to me, is the thing that doesn't get talked about in one of these coaching transitions, is that, hey, this impacts hundreds of people. And I think that's the difficult thing for a lot of people at Penn State, is not just how swift this happened, but, suddenly it's mid-October, and now you're going to have to worry about, all right, what happens at the end of the year? Where do we go from here? And I would imagine that with a new head coach, that is coming in there after so long, I think that just the staleness that things happen there at Penn State, James Franklin should have left several years ago. And I think it's, anytime you get into a job this long, things get stale. And I think we kind of saw that towards the end here. They had the success that, they went from 7 wins, to double digits the last couple of years, but sometimes things can still be stale. And I think that's kind of what, ultimately why this move was made now. We got to clean house. We've got to change things up, because it's not working. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and again and expecting different results. And I think Penn State finally realized that.
Bryan, you make a good point. There is a trickle-down effect here, a very human element when coaches get fired. And of course, families are affected, lives are affected, but that's cooked into this profession. And anybody who gets into it knows that that's a possibility. But I think at times, Franklin has been his own worst enemy. And when he lost the game at UCLA what did he mention? We had some injuries, and we had to deal with the travel cross country, and that sort of stuff drives me nuts. And I think it probably drove some Penn State fans nuts. They didn't go there by covered wagon. They took a plane. And when Indiana flew out to Eugene, Oregon and won there, you didn't hear anything about travel. That's just part of it. And then I think the idea that Franklin had this, what we thought was some, possible generational quarterback, Drew Aller, and he never really quite developed. And so that's on the head coach. And then when a head coach starts saying, I take full responsibility, that's on me. And we kept on hearing that after the losses from James Franklin. Well, who else's responsibility is it? You're the head coach.
Yeah.
Of course it's your responsibility. So I do think it was probably time for Franklin to rotate, and his season ends like Drew Aller's and like Penn State's season with a thud. And it can be, I remember, and maybe Pat, you do too. I remember the days when at Notre Dame, you got 5 years to prove
Yeah.
whether or not as a head coach, if you could do this.
Sure.
And then one day at Arkansas, they fired their head coach. And then one day they fired Tyrone Willingham at Notre Dame before the 5 years. And so we are at a point now where you're not producing, you're gone.
Yeah. 5 became 4, became 3, became better be careful after 2 in a lot of places.
Yes.
That is the way the sport has trended. But no, they did not travel out there by covered wagon. Gene, I think when you were first starting on the beat, you did travel by covered wagon.
Yeah, that's funny, Pat. That's good.
Yeah.
Good.
The Big 8 covered wagon riders tour was very popular back then. No, your points are all very good. Look, it's a big boy profession, and everybody knows what's at stake. And James Franklin stopped producing at the level they aspired to be at Penn State. And it's interesting. You could make a list. I thought about this. I wrote about this a little bit in the 40-yard dash of like 15 programs that realistically, traditionally have been able to expect to win a national title or play for one or be in the mix. And some of them more realistic than others. Obviously, Alabama and Ohio State, highly realistic. But Penn State hasn't won a championship since 1986. We're coming up on 40 years. And 19 schools have won championships since the last time they did. Notre Dame, 1988, the last time they won one. Texas A&M should. It's been 1939 for them.
Yeah,
and so there are some places where that's the aspiration, but getting there, there's some sort of roadblock. And that's what Penn State has been dealing with for quite a long time now. I am curious. Well, I'm just going to throw this out there. Bryan, I'll start with you. Is Penn State a national championship caliber job? Should the fans be expecting to win national championships? How good a job is it?
I think it's a pretty good job. I think you could debate where it falls if you're going to say, all right, top 10, top 15. I think it's somewhere along those lines. I mean, they were capable of winning a national title this year. There was a certain magazine that maybe have put them their preseason number 1 team. So
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah. I've got a sword here ready to fall on. Go ahead.
We'll have the mea culpa later. Yes. So I mean, they are capable of assembling the talent, capable of winning the national title. They are capable of winning the Big Ten on a more consistent basis than they have. And I think there is the fabled alignment. I think they have that right now in terms of the president, in terms of all the boosters, in terms of certainly Pat Kraft pulling in one direction, and I think that is key nowadays more than ever in this world of NIL and raising funds. And, you've got the stadium, got 100,000+ fans that show up every day. You really have the attention of a talent producing area. It ticks off all the boxes. It just, can you get over the hump? And, sometimes it's been a mental block when they've played, Ohio State. They've had issues certainly with Michigan over the years. They really haven't been able to kind of get out of their own way. And some of that has been on James Franklin. Some of that has been on the administration prior to him. And I think, we kind of saw that with the contract that he got that led to this buyout. but I think they are capable. And I think that, they are one of the few programs that you could say, when you're talking about winning multiple rounds of the college football playoff, they are capable of assembling that team. And so I think that's going to make this job pretty attractive. Obviously, they're going to pay well. You're going to have, whatever you want in terms of your staff budget. Obviously, they went out and paid Jim Knowles, $3+ million as one of the highest paid coordinators in the country. So they are a capable program. Now, whether all that alignment and all that, like we said with Texas A&M, how many times have they had all the ingredients capable of winning a national title, and they have it. So it's a difficult business. It's a difficult job. And at the end of the day, Penn State's a good job, but actually getting over the hump, that's always been the challenge. And that's the challenge for a lot of programs that they consider themselves peers with.
How many Big Ten championships did James Franklin win during his time there?
One. Saquon Barkley.
Right. So I think when you look at the Big Ten, you always start with Ohio State and Michigan. And then I think there's a little bit of a gap. And then I think there's Penn State. And so, but Penn State did survive what very well could have been a program killing scandal. And it took a while. And it took a lot of work, guys like Bill O'Brien and later James Franklin, to sort of put the pieces back together. Is it a great job? I think it is. I think most coaches would tell you that that's a place where they can win a national championship. They have the resources, they have the fan support, they have the recruiting base, they're in the right conference to do it. There are a lot of advantages that go on at Penn State. And then if you listen to Pat Kraft yesterday, so what would that have been, on Monday, what did he say? Our goal is to win national championships. So if that's your goal, then you have to think in those terms when you start looking at who's going to be your next coach. So they are certainly thinking that way. They're not thinking, hey, we'd be just thrilled to win a Big Ten championship. They want to win a national championship, and I think they have the tools to do it.
Yeah, I think so too. It's not a direct correlation, but generally speaking, if you can fill a 100,000 seat stadium, you definitely have the fan backing, and that means you have the monetary backing because you got boosters that are going to pay, and you have Big Ten revenue, and you are sitting in an area with a lot of players in the state of Pennsylvania and in the neighboring states, in New Jersey, in Mid-Atlantic, in Ohio, etc. None of those things should be problems. And to your point, Bryan, they did line everything up that Franklin wanted for this year. And he's a I need kind of guy. He's not the easiest guy to have if you're the AD, because he asks for a lot. And he got a lot this year. He got a $3 million defensive coordinator. He got some other staff changes. He got some portal successes that were supposed to help the passing game and didn't really. They got a lot of veteran players to stay for another year, partly by paying them via NIL. Drew Aller, the two running backs, Singleton, Allen, defensive guys. So it was all there. And I think that's where the frustration ultimately landed in this was, okay, we have watched Michigan go all in and win a national title. We've watched Ohio State go all in and win a national title. Let's go all in and do it ourselves. And they went all in and they busted out. And the problem was not just obviously losing the Oregon game, which I said before the game, whoever loses is not out of this thing. And they weren't, but it broke them because I think they've lost so many of those type of games. And then, yes, that's where the failure of leadership comes in, whether it's the coaches and it's the locker room of like, all right, we got to get this back together and we got to go beat UCLA. And then they didn't. And then it's just a shame spiral from that standpoint. And yeah, go ahead, Gino.
Well, Pat, I was just going to say, and they also watched Indiana, of all programs, put it together 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And they have to be going, wait, what's going on here? How is Indiana and this guy doing what we thought we're going to do?
Yeah, no doubt. Look, that's part of the zero-sum game of this is when you're at one of those places and you're watching some other program in your league that doesn't have near what you have succeed, you're like, wait a minute, what are we doing wrong here? And we'll get to Curt Cignetti in a minute. because he's going to factor into this perhaps as well. But the last thing I wanted to touch on regarding this season and really this dynamic across the country that we've seen, when this is like, speaking of covered wagons, your wagon is rolling down the road, a wheel starts to wobble. You know, a lot of places you pull over and you tighten the lug nuts or whatever, and you keep going. I don't know if there are lug nuts on covered wagons, but whatever you do to tighten a wooden wheel. But anyway, what we're seeing is the wheels come off immediately. Like Oklahoma State, just disaster. UCLA loses 3 in a row, hopeless. Virginia Tech, 3 in a row, hopeless. Arkansas, 3 in a row, fire the coach. And then the Penn State thing's the most dramatic of all. But here's my theory, and I want you to tell me whether I'm full of it or whether there might be something to it. That as you are constructing teams for the now, for this year, you're putting everything together for 1 year, and you're bringing together, in a lot of cases, players from various places who didn't go to school together for 3 years or 4 years and weren't nervous, homesick freshmen together who bonded in a way and stuck around for 4 years together, and you're bought in completely. And you lose one game, and it's like, no, I mean, you hear it all the time. Oh, we're brothers. We're brothers. Are you really, or are you not? And I think there's a transactional nature to this. It's like, well, you know, I came here to win a national championship. We lost that game. We're out. I might be checking out too. What do you guys think? Gene, am I completely ridiculous here, or is there some merit to it?
No, there's a lot of merit to it. I mean, college football has become a transactional sport now more than ever. I mean, you have look at when Franklin or when Penn State struggled these recent weeks. What did you see? All the decommits.
Yeah.
So recruits committing and then decommitting. You have players who will shut it down during the season now, the red shirt. You have players who will opt out of the bowls. You have players entering the portal. You have players going to wherever the best NIL deal is. It's entirely transactional, and the same thing goes true with coaches too. They leave.
Sure.
So I really, to your point, I think it's easier for it all to fall apart than it's ever been.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I also think it's easier to have instant success if all the pieces fit together. If somehow you get the right quarterback with the right coach, with the right support, with the right mix of roster, then you can sort of do what Indiana or Texas Tech is doing. We've seen the examples of it. So I think it can fall apart faster than ever. I also think that it can work faster than ever, too.
That's a great point, Bryan.
I think there's also a good example, you know, the team that they lost to in UCLA, in terms of, you know, not always can it completely crater. Now, I think with the Penn State team, obviously their expectations of the season are far different. And like you said, Pat, I mean, that's probably why if you're guys, all right, maybe after that UCLA loss, all right, maybe you are, hey, I'm getting on the phone with my agent. All right, look around. You know, that's the same thing those assistant coaches are going to be doing. You know, they're going to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes every day calling their buddies. Hey, what do you think might be out there? You know, what staff can I maybe land on? So it's just the change in focus inside the football building, from going all in one direction, always thinking about that Saturday game, always thinking about what's the task at hand. Maybe that shifts a little bit. And I think in the transactional era, you know, I think you are more prone to say, you know, start wondering a little bit, start considering things. And that to me is probably the biggest difference nowadays. And we see this in the NFL too. You know, when a coach gets fired and a team, you know, maybe they had aspirations of doing something in the playoffs and they don't even make the playoffs. Guys, you know, instead of going for that extra yard, you know what, maybe they're hitting the turf a little bit earlier than they would be. You know, and you see, I think that's going to come down to college as well. Just guys are going to be more protective of themselves because they know there's money to be made. And so I think there probably is a factor of that you're going to see in college football nowadays with at least the high value teams. They're going to crater. But maybe some of those other teams like UCLA, maybe they kind of rally around the new coach. They listen to that new message that's being broadcast throughout that building. Maybe they get in and say, hey, this is actually an opportunity for me to where I can show what I can do on the football field under a new regime And maybe that actually makes me more attractive when I do go in the portal and I'm thinking about things that way. So I think, it can kind of go both ways when we do have one of these situations like with Penn State and like what we saw with UCLA.
Yeah, a lot of business decisions perhaps being made, or just even without it being conscious of just like, you know what, I don't know all these guys that well. I came here for 1 year or 2 years. You know what? I'm going to do my homework or something. Probably not that. Probably not doing their homework. But anyhow, no, and Clark Lee, who's having some great success at a place that doesn't, has a saying, transformational, not transactional relationships. And that's hard to do in the current climate. If you can pull it off, you probably stand a better chance to succeed. Now, as far as Penn State's next transaction, where should they turn and where will they end up? Those are my two questions for you. Who should they target to be the next coach, and who do they get? Bryan Fischer, your thoughts.
Well, you can find the full list of candidates for Penn State on si.com. I always got to get the plug in. But, I think there's some hope. If you're Penn State, this is going to be a bit of a Mark Richt situation, with what happened at Georgia in terms of you find the right guy, you make that elevation. And I think for even James Franklin, I would add maybe he could be kind of an Andy Reid situation in terms of leaving the state of Pennsylvania and he can go find success out there. But if you are Penn State and you are looking for a coach, I think it's a pretty short list, to be honest. I think you're starting with Matt Rule. Obviously, there's some significant connections. I mean, the relationship between him and Pat Kraft, that is a real thing. They are, I don't want to say they're like brothers, but they have a really, really good relationship, work together at Temple. That they kind of understand each other. Matt is a Penn State alum, kind of beloved in that area. I would be surprised if it's not Matt Rule, but you know what? Money talks. Maybe he stays at Nebraska. I think there are a lot of factors to consider. I would obviously throw out Curt Cignetti. He's going to be the hot name. He's from Pittsburgh, and I think he could probably go a number of different ways to where he could go with his next move. But I think that's going to be a name that is certainly going to be hot in terms of, all right, we have a championship program. Let's get over the hump. And I think he's going to have to weigh a lot of factors. And then I would start with Matt Campbell as well. I think if you're looking out at the landscape and what he's done to really be one of the best coaches in all of Iowa State history, to win the games that he has with lesser talent, you do wonder if what would he do with the keys to a program like Penn State. I think that's probably where the search lands. And I think it's going to be one of those three guys.
Gino?
He says he wants to win a national championship. Pat Kraft made that very clear yesterday. Who gives you the best chance to win a national championship? First of all, if you're an AD who is good at what he does or she does, you already have a list in the top drawer of your desk ready to go. So he already knows who he wants to go after. But if I'm Pat Kraft, the first call I'm making, I'm calling Nick Saban.
Oh,
and
whoa.
I know he's going to be 74 at the end of the month. I know I've probably got no chance of him saying yes, but does he give me a better chance of winning a national championship than Matt Campbell? I would argue yes. I'll take 3 years of Nick Saban and take my chances. But if Saban says no, the next guy I'm calling is Dan Lanning. I don't care if I knew Matt Rule when he was at Temple and I loved him then. This isn't the same thing. I don't want to hear about he has Penn State ties. Bob Stoops had no ties to Oklahoma. He did great. Scott Frost had a lot of ties to Nebraska. How'd that turn out?
Not well.
Nick Saban had no ties to Alabama. Urban Meyer had no ties to Florida. Kirby Smart had ties to Georgia, and that's worked out great. But I can find you, for everyone that does have ties, there are a lot of success stories of guys who come from other programs and who do just fine. So I shoot for the moon on this one. But if that fails, where do I think they'll end up? I think they'll end up with either Matt Rule or Manny Diaz. And Mike Poorman, who's been covering Penn State for a long time, threw out a really interesting name to me, Danton Lynn, who's a defensive coordinator at USC, who I think has some support within that Penn State community, who could just be one of those kind of outside names, long shot names that maybe works his way into the discussion. I don't think Cignetti leaves Indiana.
Yeah, that's fascinating that we would ever get to a point where a coach would would say, "I'm staying at Indiana as opposed to going to Penn State." But I think it's possible for a lot of the reasons we've discussed on this podcast and previous ones, if you want to listen to earlier episodes, about almost any job can be a good job if you have the right amount of booster money and alignment, so to speak, from the administration, and you want to go for it in football. And that's what we've seen with Indiana, which kept staffers from going to other places this past offseason, with Texas Tech, which, we're just going to go out and portal whip everybody. So it's a different equation for sure. It's a different era in terms of deciding what is the best place to try to chase a championship, because Indiana is in the chase right now. I mean, that's a top 3 team as of the midpoint of this season. So they're doing it here and now. It's interesting. I mean, call Saban for sure. I would not expect him to say yes. Call Lanning for sure. I don't think he's leaving.
Probably not.
But I talked to a couple of ADs this week, and the general feeling out there is like the number of coaches that you really think could win a national championship is very small. And you're hiring at a place like Penn State that wants to win a championship, or ultimately Florida. It's pretty thin out there. And I did put together a bit of a list in the dash. There's 3 current active coaches that have won championships. That's it. Kirby Smart's won 2. Dabo Swinney's won 2, and Ryan Day has won 1, but I think looks like he's going to win more, maybe even this year. But then after that, so who are you looking at? You named one of them, Lanning, who I think can win a national championship. But is he leaving Oregon? He has been remarkably strong and consistent in saying, I'm happy here. And he should be. He's 39, but they've given him everything. And I think there's a real buy-in between he and Phil Knight that really helps. I think Kalen DeBoer can win a national championship. Didn't have a great year last year, but Alabama is looking like a playoff team this year, looking like a championship contender. They went to the championship game when he was at Washington. I think Marcus Freeman can win a national championship unless he decides to go to the NFL. I'm completely sold on him. I think the next tier of guys, it's like Mario Cristobal, Steve Sarkisian, maybe a Mike Elko. And even like Cristobal and Sarkisian, I'm not sure. But they would be, I think, in my list of people that I think would win a national championship. But the other guy that I'm going to say it, and this may be prisoner of the moment, but I don't think so. Curt Cignetti, I think, can win a national championship. I think he's that good. And if you go back and look at his work before Indiana, this is not a 2-year flash in the pan. This is a guy who's won everywhere. Division II, FCS, took James Madison up to the FBS level and was kicking people's butts there, and then took his James Madison players to Indiana and is 17-2. I really would that would be my guy I would target if I were Penn State. Gino, I agree with you. It's nice if Matt Rule is your friend, and Matt Rule's a good coach. Is Matt Rule going to win a national championship? Never had a top 10 season. He had one. He was topped out at number 12 with Baylor in 2019. They went 11-3. At Nebraska so far, he's been all right. He's been an improvement from Scott Frost. Maybe this year's team turns out to be really good, but they're 5-1 right now. They had a very advantageous early schedule. We'll see if they can continue it. Their 1 loss is to Michigan, but I would put Cignetti over Rule on my wish list and try like heck to get him. I don't know whether they can. He's from Pittsburgh. How much do regional ties really matter? To your point, who knows? But that's where I would start, and I would hope that's where you end. And if Matt Rule is the consolation prize, I'd hope he could do better than James Franklin, but I wouldn't be sure.
Well, and fair or unfair, and it's apples zucchini as far as situations in a way when you compare it to James Franklin. But Matt Rule also has had difficulties winning games against top 25 teams.
Yeah, sure has.
And so if you're a Penn State fan, and I'm sure some of them are saying, wait, what are we doing? We're going to bring in a guy who had the same problem that James Franklin did. It's a bit of an unfair comparison, but it's certainly out there. I'm with you on Cignetti. I mean, he's 64 years old. Who cares? He's 64 years old. He's crushing it.
Yeah.
And if he's 65 and he's still winning games, who cares? He's a great coach. And I'm with you. If you can't get a Saban or Lanning, of course, I'm shooting for the highest possible guy that I can think of in this case.
Sure.
But Cignetti would be a hell of a hire if he decides to leave Indiana. And Indiana has poured a lot of money into that program, but it isn't Penn State. And that's just the reality of it. But he has a great situation there. They hired him. If there's a loyalty factor and it's a coin flip, I think Indiana might win the coin flip.
Yeah.
We talk about Curt going to a lot of these places, whether it be Penn State, whether it be, Florida's definitely been tossed out if when that opens in terms of that job. But I think NFL teams should be beating down the door to hire Curt Cignetti. We talk about guys moving from college to the pros. We've seen certainly the success that Jim Harbaugh has had initially there in Los Angeles. I think Curt Cignetti, especially with a pretty active NFL coaching cycle that could be coming up. I mean, his hometown Steelers, that could be a job that opens up if they have a big slide. The Ravens, another team that's been unable to get over that hump. You think he would like working with Lamar Jackson, at the next level, a team that has a Super Bowl caliber roster? Maybe the Bills, we saw them on Monday night lose another one, to Atlanta. Maybe that's a situation where they make a move. I mean, the Bengals are out there. You don't think he could win a Super Bowl with Joe Burrow out there? Like, I look at the NFL landscape and I say, here's a guy who is a serial winner, and he instills a belief in that building. I think maybe that's the threat. If you're Indiana, you're worried more about an NFL team saying, hey, Curt, not only are we going to pay you, but we're going to have a championship caliber roster that all you got to do is guide it. And, football is football at the end of the day. And I think being as involved as he is there at Indiana in terms of who's on that roster, in terms of what every job in that building is doing, like he is extremely hands-on. And he's a good coach at every single level. Why would he not work out with an NFL team? I think that to me might be the greater threat for Indiana is not Penn State, but maybe one of those premier jobs opening up in the NFL saying, hey, what, there's not a whole lot of, hot young offensive coordinator candidates that we want to go with. Let's go with a guy who is 64. You know what? Bill Belichick won a Super Bowl at 64. Andy Reid won a Super Bowl at 64. Pete Carroll got hired this last cycle at 70 plus years old. So, it's not crazy to think that maybe the NFL is where Curt Cignetti goes next.
Yeah, well, we're halfway through the season and it's already an intriguing coaching carousel. It's going to get more so. But we are halfway through the season, and this is kind of, to me, is like when you hit 4th of July in the summer, you get into the summer, you think it's going to last forever, and all of a sudden you look up, it's 4th of July, it's like, oh no, we're already on the downside. That's how I feel when football hits the midpoints. Like, it's too soon. But here we are. And so we will do what the media does at this point to hand out some midseason awards, because why wait till the end? Or you can just do it again at the end. So we've got a few awards to bestow here. Gene, I'm going to start with you. Who is your halfway Heisman Trophy winner?
I drew up a list. I got like 7 names here. And if you chose any of them, I wouldn't have a problem with whoever you picked. But I'm going to go with Ty Simpson with Alabama right now. And, Mendoza from Indiana was, right there with them. I just think the difference that Simpson has made with that team and just how quickly he's improved week to week, he has made Alabama, I think, a national championship contender. And completion percentage, the numbers there, he's been the constant to me after the loss to Florida State. And so he's my guy right now. But if you said, I want Mendoza, I would be fine with that too.
Well, I throw out Ruben Bain from Miami. And when you talk about, I know defensive guys don't get their loves. They don't get their love quite as they should, but he has been an incredible difference maker for one of the best defenses in the country. And I think, to overperform, to catch your eye like he does in every single game, the plays that he makes. I mean, defensive ends are not, capable. You saw him in that Notre Dame game, go from defensive end rushing the passer to all the way out by the sideline to get an interception and run it back like a running back. I mean, he makes the incredible plays. He forces pressures consistently. You talk about one of being the best defensive player in the country right now. I would have said easily, it's Caleb Downs. I'm going to go to Caleb Downs, and he has been awesome on the best defense in the country at Ohio State. But I go with Ruben Bain right now. I think it is close. I mean, this is probably going to be one of the more wide open Heisman races that I can remember in these last couple of years. I mean, you could go a number of different directions. I think it can kind of vary in terms of what part of the country you're at and what the games you are focused on. So I think it's going to be a fascinating race to get to New York as one of those finalists.
It'll be an old school Heisman race where if we actually have like heavy regional biases involved, which is possible. I agree. I think this is it's very open at this point, which it should be. I'm glad. For me, it came down to Mendoza or Simpson. I've seen Simpson twice in person. I've seen them both twice in person. They're both excellent, but Simpson has been dazzling. And I think he's more overall just probably a little more talented than Mendoza, but I'm going with Mendoza just based on impact on his team because Indiana is, I think, markedly better than last year and probably in a lot of areas, but I think most dramatically at quarterback. Curtis Rourke was good last year by every measure, but Mendoza gives him a completely different element. He's much quicker decision-making. I think he sees the field better, incredibly accurate and strong arm, and he's got some moxie to him. He will run the ball in key situations, and when he threw the pick six and Autzen Stadium is going completely insane, and it's like, oh, here we go. Now Indiana's going to get beat. He's like, no, let's go back out on the field, and I'll drive us right down there and score the go-ahead touchdown. So I'm going to say Fernando Mendoza for me for now for the halfway Heisman. All right, because we're the negative media, we need a halfway flop. Who is your halfway flop, Bryan Fischer?
Well, I think it's easy to go with Penn State. So I think that's the easy choice. That's where we're going to go. I mean, they fired their coach in mid-October. So I think that is what we kind of go with. But I would add out there that as much talk as there's going to be about flopping around Penn State, I got to bring up Clemson as well. What they've done these last couple of weeks. I mean, losing to Syracuse now, losing to Georgia Tech the way they did. I mean, this was a roster and a program that Dabo Swinney talked about, contending for a national title. This was the year it all aligned in terms of all those veteran guys coming back to school, playing well, but they haven't. You talk about those first round picks along the defensive line. Where's the impact that they've had? Cade Klubnik has not been as sharp. He looks more like freshman Cade Klubnik than anything right now. The wide receiving core has not produced. The defense that you thought, all right, they bring in Tom Allen, they're going to be much better. They allow these third down conversions that just make you scratch your head. So it's a close tie, I guess you will, or maybe a close second place for Clemson to compare to Penn State. But those are the two where I instantly go to in terms of flops.
You mentioned Georgia Tech. We forgot to mention Haynes King. And I think, Pat, you wrote about him. Talk about a kid with a lot of grit. Love watching that kid too. Well, I mean, I think Penn State retires a trophy, as flop of the half season. But if I had to pick a runner up, I think it's North Carolina. I think that's a program where you have to put yellow police tape around the building right now and just say, this is really, really bad. And the autopsy isn't pretty right now. I know Bill Belichick came out yesterday and said all the rumors, all the talk of him leaving are categorically false. He's not going anywhere. Okay, I'll take him at his word, but I'll believe it when I see it. If this thing continues to show no progress, then I think the calculus changes and anything is possible. But for pure buildup entering the season to return on investment, North Carolina doesn't have a peer. It's been a complete implosion.
Yeah, I'm going with the Heels as well because they are unbelievably bad. I mean, terrible. They have beaten two nobodies and been killed by every good team that they've played. And this is Bill Belichick. Much more was expected. So I don't need to amplify further on everything you said. The yellow tape is all over the facility there. All right, halfway surprise. We'll be positive. Class half full. Gino, who's your halfway surprise?
I wrote down UCLA's resurgence, quarterback struggles, but I'm going to go with the fact that Billy Napier is still employed at the University of Florida. That is a bit of a shocker to me. At some point, Florida simply just has to make up its mind. They won this week, but they lost this week, but we're going to hang in. Just say something, do something. This idea of that you can just keep on floating week to week just doesn't work. It's not fair to anybody, including Napier, by the way. So to me, that's not just a surprise, it's a shocker that he's survived this long, especially given the climate that we're in as far as coaching changes are concerned.
That's a good one. I mean, in terms of halfway surprise, I almost want to say Kent State not being the worst FBS team in the country. I would throw that one out there after bludgeoning UMass this past week in San Diego State. Another interesting case out west in terms of surprising there under another Kent State head coach in Sean Lewis. I mean, that looks like that team. UNLV as well. Some surprises in the Mountain West. A big game against Boise this week. I go to the SEC though. Texas A&M and Ole Miss. I mean, you kind of expected, all right, maybe this is a step back from where they were a year ago, just a little bit of roster transition. Yes, there were some pieces in place, but to be both top 5 teams at this point in the season, I think that's a little bit of a surprise. I mean, yet last year was supposed to be the year for the Rebels, right? That was the year that they had Jackson Dart. They had all the talent in the world, but guess what? Lane Kiffin coming around with a Division II backup quarterback that everybody likes pronouncing Trinidad Chambliss's name. I mean, that to me is one of the bigger surprises. Not only that those teams are in contention for the playoff, but that they are maybe the best 2 teams in the SEC right now. As we see here at the halfway point, no offense to Alabama.
I have Ole Miss written down on my list here, but the one I'm going to go with is Cincinnati. Talk about coaches a lot of people thought would be fired by now. Scott Satterfield. Yeah. He came into this year like fortunate to still have the job, and they just, the buzzards were circling, couldn't wait for him to lose 2 in a row and he'd be out. Hadn't lost 2 in a row, only lost 1, and the only game they lost, which was in Kansas City by 3 points to Nebraska, when Brendan Sorsby, who's actually played really well, threw a late interception that killed off a potential game-winning rally. But that game was supposed to be played at Cincinnati. And if the administration didn't sell it out from under the Bearcats, it was first going to go to Lucas Oil in Indianapolis. Then all of a sudden it ends up, it's a virtual Nebraska home game. You play that at home, you win the game. You're sitting there undefeated right now. So I give Scott Satterfield a lot of credit for, to use the coaching cliche, blocking out the noise and just doing it this year. And they've been good. Now, they've got some hard games still to come, but the Big 12 is just so fluid. Why can't Cincinnati go from near the bottom to near the top and possibly contend for the Big 12 championship? So it's a fascinating story what's going on there. And they love their football up there. It's a great stadium if you've ever been, and a very dedicated fan base. It's not the biggest fan base, but they get behind the team. So I'm happy to see them have some success. All right. I'm trying to think who I'm starting with here. I think Bryan, with you, coach of the year, coach of the half year. Who do you got?
Coach of the half year. Yeah. I'm going to go with Matt Patricia as the assistant coach of the half year. Cause I did not see this coming. I was very skeptical, certainly talking with some folks around Detroit. I saw him certainly crash and burn. I mean, he was offensive coordinator there for the Patriots for a little bit in terms of when things went wrong and real south there for Bill Belichick. But he has positioned that Ohio State defense. That is the reason why they are capable of going back to back, which is not something you kind of thought coming into the year. You thought, all right, well, they lose, the double-digit draft picks, year after year after year. And you thought, all right, maybe there's one of those rebuilding years with the freshman quarterback and, just a lot of new pieces and a lot of new faces across that roster. But Matt Patricia has done an excellent job. And then I also give a shout out to Tony Elliott at Virginia. 5-1, ranked, got the big home win against Florida State. They're probably going to be bowl eligible after beating Wazoo this weekend. They've gone from frustrating to watch for a lot of their fans to very fun to watch during their games. And it's not crazy to think that with that schedule in the ACC that they go 10-2 this year for a guy who was firmly on the hot seat coming in.
Forde, I know what you're going to do. You're going to pick one of your two guys that you said could win national championships. It's either going to be Kalen DeBoer or Cignetti. So I'm going to let you have that moment. I'm going to go ahead and pick the coach of the 1/3 of the half season, and that would be UCLA's Tim Skipper.
There you go. All right.
What he has done is a football miracle. It really is, if you think about it. To win the games that they've won, to do it under those circumstances, to do it with the utter joy that they're doing it with. They hadn't led a game during their first 4 games of the season, and now they've done what they've done, and it's amazing, and it's fun, and it's kind of one of the cool things about college football when an interim coach can come in there with an interim offensive coordinator and just somehow pull off these upsets. So I'm going to go with Tim Skipper.
I like it, and I will say that I have heard, and it resonates, that people turn this into a Jerry Neuheisel thing, and he's done great. The 2 games he's been the coordinator, and he's a great story. But I think that became the easy hook because his dad's on TV and his dad's famous, and dad played at UCLA and he played at UCLA, and it was this very cool family story. But Tim Skipper's the guy actually in charge.
So, yes.
Yeah, give him a little credit too. So it has been fantastic. But no, Gene, I'm not going with Kalen DeBoer. I'm not going with whoever else you thought I was going to go
Cignetti.
with. Yeah, now, look, Sig's gotten enough praise on this podcast. I'm going with Ryan Day. Brian Fischer can have the coordinator. I'm taking the head coach who had to replace both coordinators and his starting quarterback and 18 other guys who got drafted. Maybe not quite that many, but a lot. And they're really good. And they threw Julian Sayin in there as a completely untested freshman. He's playing great. And I think I touted him at the beginning of the year. Freshman running back Bo Jackson is playing great. The defense is completely lights out. And I did go to their practice in August and thought, oh my God, this offense is in trouble. But no, it's just the defense is that good, and now the offense has been fine. So I am super impressed with what Ryan Day has done in what really was a major rebuild. So I'm going with him. All right, team of the half year. Gino, who you got?
Well, then if you took Ryan Day, I assume you're going to take Ohio State as your team of the half year. I will go ahead and choose the obvious, Indiana. I just think they've been the story of the half season. There are a lot of other nice candidates, USF, Miami, Texas Tech, Ohio State, but I'll go with the obvious choice. I'll take Indiana.
Yeah, Ohio State is the team of the half season in terms of obviously being number one, looking like they're going to repeat. But I would go for this one and not to overlook Indiana, but I think it's Texas Tech. The way that they've played with all the pressure they had coming into this season. I mean, how many stories were done on that roster and what they cost, and how many times do you hear the name Cody Campbell about their booster and he's on ads on TV? Texas Tech was to me, in terms of the actual, performance meeting expectations, they went out and did it. And not only do they look like the class of the Big 12 at this point, but they look like one of those teams that can get one of those top 4 spots and get a bye into the playoff. And then we can really see, can this experiment work out there in Lubbock? I think that to me is not only a storyline worth following in the second half of the season, but it was impressive to see what they have happen in the first half of the season. And I mean, they're the team that with the greatest margin of victory in all their games this year. Texas Tech to me was the team of the half season.
All right. Now both excellent choices. And Ohio State's gotten enough love here. So I'm going with the U, Miami, who I think should be number one. It's close. I think there are 3 teams that have separated to a degree as of now, Miami, Ohio State, and Indiana. but I'm super impressed with what the Canes have done. They've put together some portal hits, and they have some homegrown recruits who have done well. Ruben Bain was a Cristobal recruit from Miami. Malachi Toney, freshman recruit from Miami.
Yeah,
and they've been really good. Big win over Notre Dame to start off, and then they've just piled on from there. They won the Florida State Championship. They blew out USF. They easily beat Florida. They easily beat Florida State. So they're getting it done right now. We have to see if they can continue to stay out of their own way. That has historically been an issue, but boy, oh boy, does the schedule set up well. But there's a big game Friday night, which we will get to here in a minute. All right. Dumbest thing you've seen this year. There's always a lot of dumb things happening in college football. This is part and parcel of the allure, I guess, of it, is that there's all kinds of ridiculous ideas and premises and things going on. So, Bryan, what is your dumb idea of the half year?
Anything out of Tony Petitti's mouth. Can we go with that?
Yeah.
I mean, between this, the playoff expansion and digging your heels in, this is the reason why we're not going to have a 16-team playoff next year. It's because Tony Petitti's digging his heels in on all these automatic qualifiers that the SEC shot down in about 24 hours down in Destin. You got the private capital thing that has popped up these last couple of weeks as well. In terms of the investment into the Big Ten, it's just like, and even just a week ago at Big Ten Media Days, I mean, he's talking about tournament expansion. Hey, we should make sure that Cinderella gets kicked to the curb in the play-in games. This is every idea that he's had these last couple of months has riled up fans, and not in a good way. And so I'll nominate Tony Petitti and anything that is coming out of his mouth.
Well, you just killed me there. That's exactly what I was going to say. So I'll pivot. Obviously, you and Forde not taking Chunk and Fat Bear Week was a huge, huge mistake by you guys. I could also nominate the person who said that Arch Manning was a classic flop heading into the Texas game. But I guess I'll go with another semi-predictable one. All the people, I'm included in it, who had Texas and Penn State playing in the national championship. Now, Texas still has a chance of reaching the national championship, and it's going to be a tough road, but obviously Penn State will not be there. So to all the preseason people who fell in love with the Longhorns and the Nittany Lions, well, there you go.
Yeah, and I was one of those who fell in love with the Nittany Lions. That's my dumb play of the week. I was the driving force behind Penn State being picked number one by Sports Illustrated. So thank you. I can throw the hex on all of them, anybody, and I certainly appear to have done so with the Nittany Lions. That was a risky pick, but I didn't think it would go this bad, this fast, that they'd be 3-3 and firing the coach. I thought maybe they're 5-1 and ranked 7th or something, but no, it's a complete free fall. So I'm owning that one. All right, winners and steak dinners, guys. Our picks, we got to get to those. And like I said at the beginning, we're competent right now, which is slightly shocking, but here we are. Overall records, Gene 21-16, and that does include the Chunk pick. Congratulations. There's your extra half game. They're up. You're up 1.5 games on Bryan at 19-17, and I have rallied to 500, 18-18. So let's see if we can keep it going. Thank you very much. 4-1 this last week. Read my picks for our betting column thing that we do. I do with Ian McMillan. I'm 12-3 the last 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh!
I know what I'm doing there. Come on. All right. Now we are not picking Ole Miss and Georgia, even though it's a great game, because I've been trying to, where possible, have at least one game from each of the Power Four conferences, because we're trying to be inclusive here and get listenership from all over. So that game's not in here, but it's very interesting, and I want to see if Georgia has played last season over this season so far. Lose to Alabama last year, lose to Alabama this year. Beat Tennessee last year, beat Tennessee this year. Last year, they were horrible and lost in Oxford to Mississippi. Are they going to do it again? If so, they're going to get onto playoff thin ice. But We're not picking that game. We're starting the Friday night ACC game. Louisville with one loss at Miami. Miami is giving 13.5. Let's start. Bryan, let's start with you. Where are you going on this game?
I am extremely worried about the back door in this game because, what does Miami do? They start out fast. And they let Notre Dame back in the second half. Let Florida State back in the second half. And both these teams coming off a bye, we know how Jeff Brom is in terms of dialing up crazy plays and coming up with some unique beaters that can get you a touchdown very quickly. A lot of speed on that Louisville team in particular, a lot of speed that's from South Florida that knows this is going to be a big game. This line started out at 7.5. It's gone up to 13.5. So I'm going to follow the money a little bit and reluctantly go with the Canes because I think when you do speed up, with that defensive line in particular, when you speed up Miller Moss, he tends to make mistakes. I think Miami can take those back to the house. So I think they do end up covering that 13.5.
These have been pretty high-scoring games in recent history. And, Bryan, you mentioned they've both had 2 weeks to prepare. Louisville's only losses to Virginia, I believe, and they did beat a pretty good Pitt team. And I think if it's a high-scoring game, I think Louisville can stay within the number. I'll take Louisville, and I'll take the 13.5 points.
I'm with you there. I just think Jeff Brom, dangerous underdog coach, has pulled off a lot of upsets going back to his time at Purdue and also at Louisville. Thumped Clemson on the road last year as an underdog. I'm not sure they win this game, but I think they keep it within the number. I think this is a 7 to 10 point game probably. Your fears about Miller Moss throwing the ball to the wrong team are justified, but they do have some weapons, and if he can get the ball to the weapons, watch out for him in open space. So I think this is going to be an entertaining game, and Louisville keeps it within 13.5. All right. USC Notre Dame, and I have thoughts on this one. Matter of fact, forget you guys. I'm leading on this one.
Go ahead.
Notre Dame is home. Notre Dame is giving 9.5. And if this is the last time these two play in Notre Dame Stadium, I'm going to riot. I will have had it. This is the last game under contract at Notre Dame. There's one more next year in Los Angeles, and then there is no contract. And this is USC's doing. This is what USC has been, because, gee whiz, we took the money to go to the Big Ten, and we've got to make all these trips to play in the Midwest. We don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to go, especially in the middle of the season when this game has been played since 1961 at Notre Dame in October, when we're already going to Ann Arbor and Piscataway and Iowa City and State College and whatever. That's your problem. So if you want to live with ruining this wonderful tradition, probably my favorite rivalry game of all time, go for it. Now, this could end up getting moved to earlier in the season, September, first game of the year. I don't want to see him. If it has to be September, fine. But if you're playing in Arlington or Las Vegas or Mexico City, screw you. That's garbage. This is a great rivalry that should be played in great, iconic stadiums. LA Coliseum, Notre Dame Stadium. I don't want to see you playing in Las Vegas. That would be terrible. So, USC, figure it out. That's my thoughts there. As for the game, I don't know. I'm taking Notre Dame and laying the points. I think Notre Dame's playing really well. And look out. Don't let the Irish into the playoff, because they could be dangerous if they get there.
Lincoln Riley.
Go ahead, Bryan.
Well, I echo what Pat said there on the rivalry. I mean, this is not only one of the classics, but you look forward to this. If you're a USC fan, kind of getting that chilly air out there in the Midwest, and this time of year, you look forward to going to South Bend. It's just a classic when those helmets are coming out, the colors. It just pops in this game. But Lincoln Riley is 24-5 in the state of California. Lincoln Riley in road games outside the state of California, 7-10. They're injured at running back. They have issues, I mean, in terms of the offensive line, they got some guys out, but I think they can make some plays. You saw Texas A&M put up a lot of points on this Irish defense. Maybe that caught them by surprise a little bit. I don't know. I don't like going with USC, but 9.5 is a lot to cover in this game. They are going to be fired up for this one because they know what it means. After beating Michigan, that was probably the best win of Lincoln Riley's tenure there at USC. I think they follow up. I don't know if they win, but I think they at least cover that 9.5.
Pat, don't hold back on this thing. I mean, what's the word on the street? How do you really feel about the rivalry?
Yeah,
it would be a shame. And it's a great uniform game, by the way.
Great uniform.
USC and South Bend do not get along. And I was jotting down the Trojans have lost 6 of the last 7 games versus Notre Dame and haven't won at Notre Dame Stadium since 2011. But Notre Dame also has some injury issues, especially on the offensive line. And I had seen 8.5 points. I'm thrilled that it's 9.5 points. I'll take those 9.5 points, and I'll take USC.
One other thing on this, Bryan touched on it. Like, if the two things that were great about this, like if you were from sunny SoCal and all of a sudden your team is going out and you're getting that little bite of autumn, I mean, it's very cool. But then the flip side, too, it's Thanksgiving weekend, and it's getting dark at like 5:30, and you flip on the TV, and it's sunny in Los Angeles, and they're playing that game on that beautiful grass, and it's like, oh, man, that is the greatest thing. Don't play the game indoors in Las Vegas. Good God. All right, another great rivalry game. Third weekend in October, Tennessee, Alabama. Smokey the Hound, whatever they call the elephant at Alabama. This is a great, great SEC rivalry, which has been protected and maintained at least for the next 4 years, 2026 through 29, when they go to the 9-game schedule. I hope they keep playing forever. Bama is at home. Bama is giving 8.5. Gino, how excited is the campus there for this? How deep is the feelings when it comes to Bama? Are they the most hated team for Tennessee? And who are you picking?
A lot of questions there, Pat.
Yeah.
Well, Bama is Tennessee's traditional rivalry. And I think there's a lot of respect at Tennessee for Alabama. No team that they would rather beat than Alabama, but there's respect for Alabama's program. But the Vols haven't won in Tuscaloosa since 2003. I wrote that down. Bama crushes them on the road. The last 7 games have been won by Bama by almost 25 points each time at Tuscaloosa. Now, that was with Saban. This was with DeBoers. I understand the difference. And this will be the 4th tough game in a row for Bama. Georgia, Vandy, Mizzou, and now a traditional rival like Tennessee. But I think Bama's kind of found whatever they found, and they look awfully good. And as much as Tennessee's my alma mater, I think Bama wins the game, and I also think that they cover.
I'm right there with you. You know, you look at that Tennessee defensively, particularly, that was the strength last year. But it, you know, they made Georgia look like they were an air raid team at times in that game in Neyland, and that was at home with that environment. I think Alabama is able to pick them apart. I'm very curious to see how well Alabama can run the ball a little bit in this one to provide a little bit more balance. But Ty Simpson, I mean, he's one of those guys that you're penciling in on your ballot at the Heisman at this point. I think he's able to pick Tennessee apart. So give me the Tide to cover, especially at home, that 8.
I'm going to go the other way and just say Tennessee covers at least. I'm not disputing any of your reasoning, but I think cumulative effect of 4 straight ranked opponents maybe catches up with Alabama a little bit here. That's a tough run, and don't discount Vanderbilt and Missouri just because they're not traditional powers. Those were big time games, and I think a 4th one here where Tennessee maybe comes in a little fresher and certainly highly motivated. I think they at least keep it close. I'm not picking them to win, but I think they keep it close.
What'd you say it was, 8.5?
8.5.
Okay.
Yep. That's the spreads. Vegas is devilish. They're demonic. They know what they're doing. They make these difficult for a reason. And then we usually end up on the wrong side of them. One more rivalry game and another great one. Holy War. Utah at BYU. 2 schools that have geography in common and some other things, but a lot they don't have in common. And the differences there make this really fascinating, and also great depth of feeling from my experiences out there. Bryan, you live in the state. You are around this rivalry year round. What do you got here? Utah giving 3.5 at undefeated BYU.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a commercial that the two school presidents have put together that they're airing, locally in the state about rivalry right. But this thing is heated, and I would argue no rivalry involves more crossover in terms of coaching, in terms of players, in terms of families than the Holy War. There is a lot of hate and a lot of distrust and a lot of animosity between the two sides, but there's also a lot of familiarity, and so I think that's what produces some great moments in this game. I think it's going to be a fascinating and fantastic atmosphere down there in Provo, but give me Utah to cover the 3.5. I think they're the better team. I think Bear Bachmeier kind of looks like more of a freshman quarterback in this one. I think they can make him enough one-dimensional in the running game to where you can say, all right, we can take advantage of that. And I think Kyle Whittingham, he came back to school to coach again in games like this. He would like nothing more than to walk away a winner with a win over BYU this season. I think they cover the 3.5, and I think they win convincingly.
It's amazing. They're getting Utah's giving 3.5 against an undefeated team at BYU.
Yeah.
So that tells you something. Utah, I believe, has lost the last 2 games to BYU, but BYU needs double overtime to beat Arizona. So is that a danger sign, or were they sort of looking ahead to the Utah game? I think it's a danger sign. I think Utah's been playing pretty well lately, and I'll take Utah, and I'll also give the 3 and the hook on this one.
I'm with you guys here. I think the Utes I think they're a very good team. They did not play well against Texas Tech, but Texas Tech is excellent.
Really good.
Since then, they have taken care of business.
For 3 quarters, they played them pretty close. So it was a much closer game than that final score indicated.
Yeah. They struggled offensively, I know, in that game. But I think BYU is overachieving to be undefeated to this point. As you said, they've lived dangerously, obviously barely getting out of Tucson with the victory. I like their moxie. I like what they're doing, but I am rolling with the Utes and giving the 3.5. Okay, lock of the week. Who has one?
Let's hear Bryan's obscure choice of the week as usual.
Bryan's
Go
deep
ahead.
Track. Here we go.
Deep track.
I almost feel pressured when I'm scrolling through the lines and I say, all right, what's going to raise an eyebrow from Gino more when I go off the obscure. So I'm going to go Southern Miss.
Oh my,
Charles Huff, another former Penn State assistant, a guy who's going to be in the mix for a lot of jobs. Only, they're -4 at Louisiana.
Sure.
The -4 goes.
Yeah, that's the game. That's the game I was thinking of too. It's crazy that those are the 2 that we landed on.
What do you got?
Hey, I give you a lot of credit, man. It's amazing you find these things. You just mentioned Texas Tech. I have them at 10.5 against Arizona State. I don't know what number you have. I'm going to give the 10.5. Texas Tech is one of 3 teams that has yet to lose a game against the spread. You want to try to guess the other 2?
Jeez.
I will be here all day.
Yeah, let's not.
Memphis and Ohio State are the other 2.
Interesting. Okay.
As we record this, there are questions about the starting quarterbacks for both of these teams, but I'll still roll with Texas Tech. I'll give the 10.5. I really believe in the Red Raiders. I think they're really, really good team. And I think Arizona State is right at the edge of which way this season can go for them.
Yeah, injuries have really hurt them. And if Jeff Sims plays quarterback again, that's not good for them. But Kenny Dillingham, good coach at home. I'd give him a chance to at least cover, but I'm not picking that game. I am going with South Carolina as a home dog, getting 5.5 against Oklahoma. Sooners coming off of Red River, maybe a little hangover there. Shane Beamer, one of those underdog upset kings. And Oklahoma, I thought, got a little bit exposed by Texas in terms of offense. They're not running the ball great, and if Mateer isn't carrying them and doing everything, I don't think they're that great on that side of the ball. And defensively, they've only created 2 turnovers this year, which the defense has been good, but sometimes you got to take it away. So I'm going to take South Carolina and get 5.5 there. All right, one other story for you guys, and then we'll get out of here and let the listenership move on with their lives. But we had to get to this. We had a police chase, fellas, in Parma Heights, Ohio. Very dramatic. Everybody loves a good police chase, right? Here's what happened. This is from the AP, some excellent writing from the AP. The subject of an Ohio police pursuit took off down the road, a flash of orange in the darkness, but officers eventually caught up and grabbed the escapee, a runaway inflatable pumpkin. You know, they got those yard inflatable things these days. Everybody likes those. I don't like them, but some people do. The wind blew it down the street, and it was actually a runaway pumpkin was rolling down the street in Parma Heights, Ohio. And the cops had to go chase it down and then apprehend it. And they had a hard time because it's giant. And what do you do with it? You know, it's not really easy to grab a hold of. So pumpkin darn near got away. They did finally get it, and they actually got it into the police car. Impressive. Now, my question for you all, what I want your reaction to. The greatest trick Hobby Lobby ever played on America is thinking that you need 9 million decorations for your house for every season and every quote-unquote holiday. And you have to start putting them out like weeks in advance or months. How early is too early for you to put out any Halloween decoration? Gene.
God, I don't even know if we put candy out anymore. We're like the couple that turns off the front porch lights and closes the drapes and like, don't bother us. We're watching Netflix, for God's sakes.
Hateful.
I know. I'm sorry, kids. Go get your Milky Way someplace else. My wife's she does all the decorating. We went to the mall here in Knoxville, like near, I don't know, like the last week of September. They had Christmas stuff.
Oh yeah.
My head exploded. I just can't believe it. That, you know what? Put the Halloween stuff up like 2 days ahead of time. That's all you need. It's not a national holiday. Enough already. And honestly, the Parma, Ohio thing is strong, but nothing's ever going to beat the Barbie battery operated chase that you told us about in Canada earlier in the season.
No, that's the winner of the half season there, but we'll keep trying.
Okay.
Bryan?
Well, Gene, you bring up a good point. Nothing, maybe this is my BK rant since we didn't play the audio, but I hate seeing Halloween stuff up in August or even September is like pushing it, and it's at Lowe's, it's at Costco, it's at any store you want to go to. It's like we got to have some sort of holiday display. Let's go with Halloween. Like it frustrates me to no end. I just have a visceral reaction to it. I would say probably a week out, you're fine in terms of putting out the Halloween decorations. It's nice. I have like those. I've put up those like lights that you can change colors, so it's pretty easy to where you can just say it's orange. That's good enough for me, and set out a bowl of candy and go out with the kids. But like it is frustrating to me whenever I walk into a store and it's not that month, and you have those Halloween decorations out, or you have Christmas decorations out right now, and I've definitely seen that around recently. Like that to me is like, what are we doing here? That I can't get over that.
Holiday creep is a societal menace. It's bad. I don't like it. And I was watching last night. I had the 2 Monday Night Football games
Holiday
and the baseball game on. I don't remember, on the multi-view. I don't know which one, but one of them had a Christmas decoration commercial.
Yeah,
and
please.
Like, you can't do that to me. You cannot do that to me on October 13th at that time. So I'll get a pumpkin like the week of Halloween, and I'll carve it the day of. And if my wife remembers to get the skeleton out and put it on the front door, fine. But if not, we're just going with the pumpkin. So that's as far as we go, and it's going to be pretty last minute, Charlie.
Well, and Pat, one last thing. To these kids, you want me to give you candy? Then actually dress up as something. I'm so tired of like the 14-year-old kid, and I open up the door, and I like, what are you dressed up as? As a 14-year-old kid. Like, no, that doesn't do it, dude. No Snickers for you.
Yeah, you got to
Go
put
to
in
the
a little
next
effort, right? A little
Put
effort.
some effort in.
Yeah.
Go as Pat Forde if you want.
Yeah. Then you
Do
get
the
no
big
candy.
hair.
You get doors shut in your face. That would not be a good play. So, all right, that's our show for this week. Thank you as always for listening. We came to you early because we thought the news necessitated it. We'll be back again next week, most likely in our regular time and place. So have a good week. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you all later.